How's it going, everyone? We've got a fantastic PlayStation Store spring sale that is running right now. A lot of new deals have cycled in, and we're here to once again go over some deals under the price of $10. So we got about 15 deals. A lot of the stuff I'll try to go through relatively quickly since a lot of collections, remasters, things of that nature, stuff that I'm sure you guys have heard several times, but might as well do it again for those of you that are looking for some new stuff to pick up. So right off the top, we got Borderlands the Handsome Collection, 75% off for $9.99. You got Borderlands 2, Borderlands the pre-sequel. Most of the game's respective DLCs, you're just missing one piece of DLC for Borderlands 2, which is relatively innocuous at the end of the day. Borderlands, in my opinion, was at its absolute peak with Borderlands 2. I thought Borderlands 2 was just a tremendous game. Pre-sequel was pretty decent as well, but Borderlands 2, I feel like they found a right balance between the gameplay, the comedy, and just overall being a really solid game. $9.99 for both games with the replayability those games have and all the extra content. Like, this is a disgusting amount of content for your money. Also, I would say that while Borderlands has been a focal point as far as co-op gameplay goes, I've always enjoyed Borderlands from a solo standpoint as well, so if you want to play the game solo, I think you're still going to have a great time, so I definitely would give that a shout. Next up, I imagine this is a game that 99.9% of you have played. However, for the 1% that hasn't, Last of Us Remastered is 50% off for $9.99. Look, Last of Us Part 1 to me is still at way too high of a price point. I want to see that get down to $20 or get baked into PS Plus Extra. I think that would be a huge addition for Plus Extra, but one of the two. Until then, for those of you that are a little bit budget-minded, I gotta go the route of recommending you Last of Us Remastered because the game still looks quite good, and obviously Last of Us 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. Actually want to do another playthrough of the game here soon. I installed it recently. We'll see when I get to it. Like, it's a relatively short game, all things considered, in comparison to a lot of the other games coming out, and obviously, a lot of discussion these days. HBO show killed it. Last of Us 1 was great. Last of Us Part 2, I have my opinions on it, but not to go down that rabbit hole right now. Last of Us 1 still a phenomenal game. Strongly recommended. Next up, we got DMC Devil May Cry Definitive Edition. 75% off for $9.99. This game was done by Ninja Theory, the same guys that brought you the most recent Hellblade titles. Hellblade 2 not out yet, but Hellblade 1 as well, and prior to that, they did Enslaved Odyssey to the West, and a couple of other notable titles. DMC Devil May Cry is a game that I really enjoyed. When it initially came out, I want to say it was the spring of 2013, got quite a lot of pushback just because of, I think a lot of people were not crazy about the Dante redesign. You really gotta go into this game not thinking it's a Devil May Cry game, and I think you'll enjoy it. Like, Devil May Cry still exists, DMC 5 was great, but I think a lot of people saw this game as, like, Devil May Cry as a whole rebranding, and I don't think we needed that as showcased by DMC 5, but DMC Devil May Cry is still a solid game that I would recommend, and at $9.99, a decent action game that's definitely worth your time and money. Next up, gotta give a shout out to a couple of the Mega Man collections. I mean, these are always easy games to recommend. Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1 is 60% off for $7.99. This includes Mega Man X 1 through 4. If you want everything, they do have the double pack for $15.19. You'll literally save, I think it's 80 cents. So, yeah, if you want to get the double pack, go for it. But X Legacy Collection 1 is where the bulk of the quality is. I think X1 through X4 are all stellar games. And obviously, when it comes to Mega Man, I'm gonna be a little bit nostalgic. Mega Man X4 was literally the first console video game that I remember playing. Maybe I played something earlier, but as far as back as my memory goes, X4 was the first console video game I ever played, and I absolutely loved the game, and maybe some of that is nostalgia, but you had the playable characters of X and Zero, and then going back playing X1 through 3, those games were great as well, albeit Super Nintendo titles. Would have been nice if they included Maverick Hunter X, which was the PSP remake of Mega Man X, but we can't have nice things, so that's not on the table, but X Legacy Collection is great and definitely would give it a shout. And check out the other collection as well. X7 gets a lot of flack and X6 isn't the greatest to a lot of people, but X5 is really good and X8 is pretty damn good. And I didn't even hate X7 that much, but and X6 I thought was okay. So, you know, all in all, like, X Legacy Collection 2 is quite good as well. Mega Man Zero ZX Legacy Collection for $9.89. The value in this collection is really high. You get 0, 1 through 4, ZX and ZX Advent, albeit, you know, 0, 1 through 4, GBA titles, ZX Advent DS games, so keep that in mind, but 6 games for $9.89. 0, 1 through 4 are relatively short but challenging as well. ZX and ZX Advent took Mega Man in a relatively cool direction where it became more of a Metroidvania, and would have been nice to see the franchise continue. I believe a ZX3 was in development, but ultimately got canned, and we know quite a thing about games getting canned from a Mega Man front, so it is what it is, but $9.89 for Zero ZX Legacy Collection, pretty good deal. Next up, want to give a shout to Necromunda Hired Gun, 75% off for $9.99. Now, I think this is the first time I've mentioned this game on this channel since probably it was initially released. I got a copy of this game a while ago from Focus when it came out, and I played it, and it's definitely a janky, clunky game. Like, it's not a game you should be spending full price on, $40 at this point. It takes place in the Warhammer universe. I'm not too attached to Warhammer's universe. But as far as an over-the-top, fast-paced first-person shooter, it is pretty good for what it is. But you gotta be paying, like, a price point like this. $9.99, sure, if you want a fast-paced FPS, I think you'll ultimately enjoy it. And if you want, like, some nonsensical entertainment, Necromunda will definitely be that. For $9.99, again, I think it's a pretty decent pickup, all things considered. Next up, Mafia 2 Definitive Edition, 67% off for $9.89. Enjoyed my time with Mafia 2, of course. This is a game that I played when it initially came out. I think, if memory serves me correctly, this might have been one of those games that I rented with GameFly when I had that back in the day as like a teenager. But yeah, remember really liking Mafia 2, and then they came out with this Definitive Edition, and there ain't much definitive about it, but Mafia 2 is such a good game that I would say, you know, go check it out. It's more of a focused story-based game. It's not really like this massive open world that you can explore. I know Mafia generally gets some comparisons to GTA. They're really totally different games, but Mafia 2 is quite good, narratively quite strong. Gameplay shows its age a little bit, but what can you do? The game at this point is almost 15 years old, so kind of insane to think about, but nonetheless, good deal there. Next up, Shadow of the Colossus, the remake by Bluepoint Games. I mean, they did a tremendous job with SOTC, and SOTC was a game that initially came out on the PS2, and if you look up, like, the top 10 PS2 game lists, whatever video, outlet, article that you read of the top 10 PS2 games of all time, I would have to imagine that 90% of those, maybe even higher than that, would have Shadow of the Colossus in the mix. I can't imagine that wouldn't be the case. The game was very much ahead of its time when it initially came out on the PS2, but man, what a fantastic game it was. Bluepoint really did a good job of remaking the game, and Bluepoint at this point became one of those standard bearers for doing high-quality video game remakes. It'll be interesting to hear what they are doing next. I feel like their next game has to be relatively far along, given, you know, Demon's Souls came out all the way back in fall of 2020, but SOTC came out back in the spring of 2017, this remake that is, and they did a damn good job with it for $10. Great pickup there. Next up, I just want to give a shout to a bunch of older JRPGs from Square Enix. These are PS1 games on PS4, all discounted. Final Fantasy VII OG, 60% off for $6.39. I know most of you guys are playing the remake, but I think it's worthwhile to go back and play the original, obviously, because the remake does some wild stuff, so, you know, going back and playing the original is a good time. Prior to playing the FF7 remake, I want to say my last playthrough, like previous to FF7 remake coming out, was Final Fantasy VII, obviously the original, back in, I want to say, like 2012, 2013. It was summer break of one year, and you know, I hadn't played it in 7 years by the time the remake had come out, and then playing the remake, you don't really compare it a lot to the original because my memory at that point, I couldn't remember the original. Then I did another playthrough of the original 7 or so months ago, and man, it's like kind of wild going back and seeing just how quickly they go through the content in the remake and the original. Like, legit, you could finish that content if you take your time, even in like 4 to 5 hours, maybe even less than that. Just kind of wild in that regard, but FF7 is a classic. It's a JRPG that everybody should play. Even if you played the remake, I think it's worthwhile to go back and play the original. Final Fantasy VIII Remastered, 60% off for $7.99. Kind of the black sheep of the Final Fantasy series, but I still think it's a good game. It's unfortunate that it had to get sandwiched between Final Fantasy VII and IX, which are, you know, heralded as the best Final Fantasy games. Obviously, that'll be a debate a lot of you guys have. 4 is great, 6 is great, 10 is great, 12 I think is super underrated, and 8 I think it's pretty damn good for what it is. I know the story is kind of questionable and some of the story-based decisions are kind of questionable, but overall, it's still a decent Final Fantasy game, and for $8, I don't think it's a bad pickup. And then also want to give a shout out to Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers Edition, $9.99 for this. Chrono Cross, as far as the Square Enix JRPGs, it's not heralded in the same view as some of the other JRPGs, like your Final Fantasies of the world, but it's still a damn good game. Story was really good, characters were likable, soundtrack is obviously, you know, pretty good as well. For $9.99, I think this is a pretty good pickup. Bloodborne, 50% off for $9.99. You can pick this up and then cry forever for a remake or a remaster. Hopefully that'll happen before I breathe my last breath in this world. But yeah, Bloodborne is great, and it's my favorite game from Software. As far as the Souls-like titles go, probably like Armored Core 6 more than any Souls-like game, just because Souls-likes aren't necessarily my genre of choice. But Bloodborne, I thought, had an awesome setting, and really, from an ambiance standpoint, I thought they crushed it. Performance definitely leaves a lot to be desired, so please let us get a remaster or a remake. And I think it will happen. Like, bro, remastering Bloodborne 60 FPS, doing a PC release as well, that sounds like a way to print just millions upon millions of dollars, and Sony at the end of the day is a business. You know, I'm sure they'll do it at some point. It's just I can't really understand why they haven't yet. Remedy titles. Alan Wake Remastered is $9.89. Control Ultimate Edition is $9.99. I didn't really dig Alan Wake 2 as much as everybody else, but I still loved Alan Wake 1, and I think it's worthwhile to play Alan Wake 1, and bro, just because my opinion of Alan Wake 2 isn't strong, gaming at the end of the day is subjective. I give you guys my subjective opinions on various video games, but I can also step to the side and realize when the majority opinion of Alan Wake 2 is that it is a fantastic, tremendous game. Obviously, go check it out. I'm just one opinion at the end of the day, but I did like Alan Wake 1 more than Alan Wake 2. Obviously, Alan Wake 2, much more recent, much more modernized, so on and so forth, but Alan Wake 1 for me was more on my alley, and Control Ultimate Edition, 75% off for $9.99. This is another opinion that everybody's gonna disagree with me on, but as far as Remedy titles go, Control is my favorite game that they've put out. From a gameplay standpoint, narrative standpoint, visual standpoint, I really dug Control. I think it's a fantastic game, and for $9.99, it's a great pickup. Most people will want my head for that opinion, but at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's just a subjective opinion, and if you guys disagree, it's all good. I know I am very much in the minority with that, but take it for what it is. I think Control is great. Lastly, Risk of Rain 2, 75% off for $6.24. Risk of Rain 2 is awesome. It is a game that co-op definitely enhances it. Visual style is great, super addicting, challenging as well, but a fun time all around. $6.24, good pickup on that. Links to all of these deals, as always, will be in the description box below. That's going to do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.